Hello everyone, I'm Diana and today we're going to be talking about plant structure. While we go through this presentation, I just want you to focus on the fact that structure determines function. And so whatever we're talking about, keep these three words in the back of your mind. Structure determines function. Okay, so we're going to start with the plant organs. There are three basic plant organs, and that's the roots, the stems, and the leaves. These are organized into the root system and the shoot system, and we can see that in the image on the right. And so the root system is just the roots, and the shoot system consists of the leaves and the stem. Taking a closer look at roots, there are three different root types that you have to know. The first is a taproot, and what we see in taproots is just one main vertical root, and we see that on the upper left corner. And then we have adventitious roots, and these come from the stems or the leaves. So we see that stem that's just laying on the floor, and whatever touches the floor will grow roots into the soil. And so that's adventitious root. And then the last is a fibrous root, and a fibrous root has no main leaf. It's just a bunch of really thin lateral roots, right? And so a taproot is one main vertical root which grows lateral roots, but a fibrous root is only the thin lateral roots. I also put on this slide root hairs, and so root hairs are very important to increase surface area on the roots, and this helps them absorb more water and nutrients. So root hairs increase surface area. Okay, now looking into stems. Stems consist of nodes and internodes, and so nodes are the points at which leaves are attached. So where you see a leaf come off of the main stem, we're going to call that a node. And the space in between two nodes is called an internode. We're then going to talk about the different buds. So the first is an auxiliary bud, and then we can see an auxiliary bud on the bottom right of the plant. And this is a bud that has potential to form a new lateral shoot or a new branch. All right, and so we're typically going to see those close to the nodes of the plant. And next is an apical bud. An apical bud, or a terminal bud, is sometimes termed, is located near the tip of the shoot. So versus it being at the node, it's going to be at the tip, and it usually causes elongation for young shoots. So if the shoot is already growing, then that's going to be an apical bud, whereas an auxiliary bud is going to be where there is potential to grow a new shoot. So growth versus origin. And then the last is apical dominance. And so we usually find this at the top of the plant or at the tips, and this helps maintain dormancy in some non-apical buds. Yeah. Next, we have to talk about stem modifications. And so the first is rhizomes, and if you remember this word from bryophytes, you remember that bryophytes were very dependent on water, and so this just helped bryophytes exist in their environment. And so a rhizome is just a horizontal stem that is right below the surface, and we see that at the top of the left image. The next modification is a bulb, and so a bulb is vertical underground shoots which have large storage leaves, and so we can see the whole bulb is not the stem. The stem is at the bottom, and then storage leaves kind of come from that point. And so it looks kind of like an onion. I think it is an onion. It looks like an onion. The next is a stolon, and these are just horizontal shoots that grow along the surface. So versus, in the soil, they're growing along the surface, and these help with asexual reproduction. And the last modification we talked about is a tuber. And tubers are just really large rhizomes or stolones, which can store food. So they usually store like carbs or different macromolecules, and they're just basically like big bulbs. On this slide, we will talk about leaves. So the first type of leaf is a simple leaf, and so this is just one single blade And it can be lobed, like the one we see here, or it can be just like one, like a normal leaf, like the leaf that we see under it, just one leaf in that form. The second is a compound leaf, and this is multiple leaflets that arise from one petiole, and they have no axillary buds. So we see, versus that one simple leaf, we have multiple leaflets, which make a compound leaf. And then doubly compound leaf is leaflets that are divided into smaller leaflets. So we have a leaf, which has leaflets, and that leaflet has leaflets, right? And so that kind of makes sense. There are also specialized forms of leaves. And so the first is a tendril, and this provides the leaf with support. The next is spines, and as we would assume, they protect the plant from predators, and they also reduce surface area, right? And so most of these spine plants are found out in the desert where they want to keep as much water inside. So if we can reduce the surface area, then they will lose less water. And so that's kind of the goal of spines. The next is storage food. So this is like aloe vera, where they're full of water and nutrients. So we have storage leaves, and then we also have reproductive leaves, and these are adventitious plantlets, and are used, the little parts of the leaf that we see here will fall off, and then that helps with reproduction. And then the last is bracts, and these are just kind of the pretty leaves we see on flowers. Now that we have talked about the different organs, we're going to dive deeper into tissue systems. And so the first layer is the dermal layer, and that's the outer layer which protects the plant. This is the skin, dermal, skin. We can put those two together. The next is vascular. So we've already learned about vascular with the xylem and the phloem, and these just help to move fluid throughout the plant. And in the picture, it's the purple. And then the last is the ground tissue, and the ground tissue pretty much does everything else. So this is photosynthesis, metabolism, storage, and support, really a lot of other functions that are not found in dermal and vascular that a plant needs to survive. And so these are the three different tissues. Now if we dive into vascular tissue systems, there are two different tissue systems, and that is the xylem and the phloem. So the xylem is used to move water up into the plant. So from the root up into the shoot is how the xylem works. And the xylem is made of tracheids and vessel elements. And it is important to remember that vascular tissue is dead cells. So always remember that vascular tissue is made of dead cells. But going back to the tracheids, so the tracheids are the really long pipes that we see, and they're on the right of the picture. And the vessel elements are smaller, and they are usually stacked upon each other. And so vessel element versus a tracheid. Okay, so now talking about the phloem. So the phloem transports nutrients, and unlike the xylem, which just transports from the roots to the shoots, the phloem transports wherever nutrients are needed. So if photosynthesis occurs in one leaf and it is needed somewhere else, then it will, transport that nutrient wherever it needs to be. Phloem is made of sieve plates and companion cells, and the sieve tubes have sieve plates, which are porous walls that will allow fluid to move between the cells. And then each sieve tube element has a companion cell, and then the companion cell has a nucleus which serves both of the phloem cells. And the last thing we're going to talk about is these other three types of cells. And so the first is parenchyma, and these are the super thin and flexible cells, and they're usually undifferentiated initially, and then during development they will become a certain type of cell. And so this means that these cells are the least specialized, and they have ability to do a lot. So they can divide and they can differentiate, and their role in the plant is to perform metabolic functions. And so most of the metabolic functions of the plant are in these parenchyma cells. The next is cholenchyma cells, and these are grouped and they support the young parts of the plant shoot. They have thicker walls than the parenchyma, and they are used for flexible support and mechanical support because of their thickness. And the last is sclerenchyma cells. These are very specialized for mechanical rigidity, so they have really thick secondary walls. And unlike the parenchyma, which we talked about, were flexible, these are very resistant to bending and cannot grow. And this is due to it being dead at maturity. So it grows and then it dies when it no longer needs to grow. And so an example of a sclerenchyma cell is a xylem cell, which moves fluid. And we need this to be really thick so that it can perform that. So sclerenchyma is very thick cells. They cannot grow and they're usually dead for mechanical rigidity. So that's all I have for today. Thank you for coming and watching my video. Good luck on the rest of the quarter.